Winston Churchill, King George VI, Neil Armstrong, John Wayne.
Harry Houdini, I believe, was a Mason.
Ben Franklin, the obvious. Paul Revere, I was always fascinated by with his Midnight Ride.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt. There were a lot of presidents have been Masons.
President Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt.
Harry Truman was a Mason.
Gerald Ford, I think the list of presidents is pretty extensive.
Tyrus Raymond Cobb, or Ty Cobb, the baseball player.
I think there were a lot of individuals in the entertainment industry in like the 30s and 40s that were Masons. I think a lot of producers, I think a lot of directors.
Did we mention Red Skelton before? Probably one of the most famous, and many people don't know it.
Walt Disney and on, Henry Ford, on and on and on.
And the list goes on and on and on, yeah.
Well, Masonry takes its roots back to basically the building of King Solomon's Temple. And there were thousands that worked on the temple. The way it was set up was that the different bands of workmen did different kinds of jobs. There were entered apprenticed, there were those that were fellowcraft, and there were those that were master masons.
Obviously, Freemasonry came from the Stonemasons Guild. They, because of the lack of education at that time, employed various scripts and words to distinguish a qualified craftsman from a non-qualified craftsman. During the course of the centuries, education became more widespread. People became better able to read, write, and think for themselves. And during the Age of Enlightenment, people became to realise that the religions, the organised religions at that time, were not satisfying them. And they found within the Freemasons a way of improving themselves as individuals without having to be beholden to the organised churches of the time. This was one of the things. There were lots of other reasons as well. What Freemasonry does, it takes the symbols and the tools that the ancient Freemasons used and uses those tools and those symbols as a means of improving themselves as individuals. The square, to square their conduct. That's just one way of it. The level, to make sure that they lived on a level with everybody within their lives. The compasses, to circumscribe their actions. The Holy Bible, obviously, as a rule and guide to their faith.
A lot of Masons aren't truly aware of the anti-Masonic period. Roughly around 1826, 1824, in the early 1820s, there was a Mason who went by the name of Brother William Morgan, and he had some issues in the area of Batavia where he lived with some other Masons. Essentially, he wanted to get accepted into a particular order and wasn't accepted into this new group that was formed. So, as with anything, and if you study the history of Masonry, they're rife with the phrase we call schisms, people essentially having beef with each other. So as a result, Brother Morgan got upset and started to write and reveal a number of the rituals, as we call exposés, into what Masons did. So by doing so, a couple overzealous brothers, misguided in some respect, conspired to take Morgan out. And the story gets fuzzy because it's said that he was murdered in some respects. Other stories said that he was taken north of Batavia, which is close to Buffalo, into Canada and let loose in Canada to be never heard from again. The image, the perception was that the Masons killed William Morgan, and one of the results of it was that if you are such a moral and upright organization, why was it that you would do such an atrocious act as far as killing a fellow member just for the sake of secrets.
Period in the mid-1800s during the Know-Nothing period or the anti-Masonic period, where both the Catholics and Protestants took pot shots at the Masons politically, thinking that there was a secret cabal running the government. The Masons had to pretty much go underground in the United States of America. And anything that had been previously just a secret fraternity had to go really underground at this point, because there was Mallard Fillmore ran against them, a guy from New York State. He won senator, and then he won presidency, of course, on the ticket that the Masons were no good for America and that they were hurting us and bringing us to something else. So if you're trying to go for your survival and keep power, you're going to go underground and start to change your public image in the outer shell so people can't detect that.
As a result of the public outcry to the death of Brother Morgan, as it was perceived, a lot of furor and fire came out of that. Openly, most of these groups formed in the Northeast area, especially in New York, and they spread throughout the country into the development of the anti-Masonic political party, much like we have a Tea Party now. They essentially organized for the purpose of removing Freemasonry from American society. And in some respect, they were definitely successful, because especially here in the state of New York and other parts, you had presidential candidates who were Masons and could not admit that they were Masons. And they were specifically asked at many of the venues, their political conventions or even speeches, what was their affinity to Freemasonry. And men like them, in addition to just men who were Masons, either relinquished their, due to religious and other overtures, relinquished their membership in Masonry or just went underground.
We kind of lost, Masonry in general, lost a generation of members because fathers would not tell their sons where they were going. Then suddenly wives and children realized, well, dad's going bowling, but the bowling ball's still in the closet. And it was secretive. You weren't allowed to talk about it. You weren't allowed to solicit anybody. And as a result, a lot of years went by where the ranks diminished. Now we got to the point where, okay, Masonry is out in the open with the Dan Brown books, for example. Just in general, we now drive around with car emblems, rings. We're very visible. And we still have secrets among ourselves to identify each other, but we're not a secret society. So now our philosophy is, well, we don't have to be so tight-lipped about it. We're not going to give away our secrets, but you can certainly become a member more easily than you could have 20 years ago.
Many times when people don't know something, they get very, very spooked, and everybody likes a good scare. Bookshops are filled with books on murder mysteries and true crime novels. And the same thing has happened with the Dan Brown and the other conspiracy novelists and popular culture mind frame that the Masons are somehow some outrageously ridiculous evil group, and that everything that possibly is trying to have any power and control. Dan Brown's problem, when he unifies these two groups, is that he has the Priory of Sion, which was a real group in France, and he has them as Masonic Jesuits, which is entirely hilarious because the two groups would probably try and kill each other at that time frame when they started this. If they were trying to go against each other, it wouldn't be a friendship, and they wouldn't go, okay, let's compile power and money and everything, let's just go for it, and they'd battle each other. So a lot of times people who don't know history and people who like a good scare like to weave things together and create a problem with it. And this is what we have with the popular culture.
Well, I think there's more being written about it. I think there's more access to it, of course, with the internet. And I think younger men now that are being exposed to it see that, well, this is something that I might be interested in. Because it's visible and because of the internet, I think there's more positive light projected than there was before. And as a result, we're getting a lot younger members, and it's adding the needed vitality to the lodges.
Pop culture has this misconception that Masonry is associated with this nefarious quest to take over the world. And if you are a successful singer, entertainment, folks in political streams, that you have a tie to Masonry, and as a result, you're here to part of a secret path to world domination. One of the problems with that, most Masons that you would speak to would tell you that they haven't told us that secret yet, and we've probably been waiting too long to find out the truth. Of course, then where people would say, well, you're not a high-level Mason to know that information, because they have this concept that the higher numbers you go, that there's more status that you have. Now, I sit before you as a 32nd degree Mason, which is basically means that I'm a member of the Scottish Rite. It's just another body of Freemasonry that teaches you additional lessons based on your first three. There's nothing higher than your 3 degrees. So the concept that we are in the dark with respect to the nefarious goals of Freemasonry and the Illuminati is really, unfortunately, untrue.
I joined Freemasonry because both my uncle and my father-in-law were men that I admired. I knew them to be Freemasons, and it seemed to me that it would be a good thing to become a member of. And so it proved to be. I've been a Freemason now for 21 years, the past 4 here in the United States. And really I joined because I felt that I needed something to improve myself as an individual. And I couldn't find that means in any other sort of organisation, be it religious or secular.
It's funny, a couple of friends of mine were Masons, and I just came upon the fact that they were Masons just by accident, basically, just in talking about our sons were receiving communion the same day, and I asked if he was having a family party, and he said, oh yeah, I'm having it at the lodge. And of course, well, what lodge? And once I became a Mason, I found out I knew a number of friends that were Masons that I didn't know were Masons. Basically, what it's done for me was brought me from being, I don't want to say introverted, but I was on the shy side. It gave me learning the ritual and getting up and standing in front of the brothers of the lodge to recite what to me is taking part in history, reciting words that George Washington, Paul Revere has said before me. To me, it's very impressive.
It was really interesting because I have friends, neighbors, had approached me about it a couple of times, and I was very reluctant and resistant to joining because my first experience with Masonry, I grew up in a little town called Canonsburg, just south of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. And my very best friend in high school, who happened to be female, her father was a Mason. And he had the little bumper sticker on the back of his car, but that was back in the day when Masons never really admitted that they were Masons or acknowledged that Masonry existed. And I'd always ask him questions about it, because why else would you have the bumper sticker on your car? But he never admitted it, never acknowledged it. And I was trying to find out more about it, and again, that was in an era when no one ever spoke about it. I was over at her house one time, back in the den where they had a little library set up, and I saw one of the books on the shelf had the square and compass on the binding, and I said, well, maybe here's my opportunity to find out a little bit about Masonry. I took the book down, opened it up, and I didn't know it at the time, of course, but it's what we call a cipher book. It's the ritual part of Masonry that we don't discuss in public. And it was all little pictures. So obviously I had no idea what it meant. I'm looking at it, flipping through it, a little confused. And then I hear a noise behind me, and I turn around, and he's standing in the door. And that's the only way out of the room. He was a Special Forces veteran, volunteered for 2 tours in Vietnam. He was not happy to see me looking at this book. I wasn't quite sure I was going to make it out of there in one piece. I did. I can't even begin to describe how angry he was. But that left a really bad taste in my mouth, a really poor impression of Masonry with me that I carried forward for a lot of years. And then when I was approached by my neighbors and friends, I came to realize that unknowingly, essentially, everybody that I was friends with, everybody that I socialized with, they were all Masons. So I looked and I said, okay, if these guys are Masons, how bad can this organization really be?
Worldwide, Masons donate $2 million a day, and you don't have to be a Mason to be a recipient of our charity. That's very important. Anybody that applies to us and we find them worthy, we're there to help instantly.
I don't know of any other organization or fraternity that has the camaraderie and the love of the individual brothers of each other and how the brothers take care of each other. If there's a problem, somebody is sick, or there's been a tragedy in the family, and this lodge has seen that on more than one occasion, that the brothers get together and help the family, the brothers, and their immediate family. So it's been a great organization to be a member of.
What we do say is that we have certain signs of recognition so that we know a brother when we meet him. And it's just, we like to keep those things to ourselves so that we can, I don't know how to explain it. I think it might be something better that somebody else explains to you, because I don't appear to have the words to explain why we've got these secrets. It's just so that we can recognise each other and keep what we know and what we do within the lodge room to ourselves. And that's the only explanation I've got, but I don't think it's a very good one, and I think perhaps some of the other guys here will be able to explain it better than I do.
It's not a secret society or a secret fraternity. It's a fraternity that has secret signs, grips, and words. And the reason we have those is to be able to identify each other in the dark as in the light, such as a handshake. If I grab your hand in a certain way and you respond, then I know that you're a Mason. And I know what degree of Mason you are if you do it properly.
There seems to be a very big disconnection from the truth and what people think.
Yeah, well, there is. But it's mainly down to the fact that the people who criticise Freemasonry don't know what Freemasonry is about or what it does. They speak from ignorance. And anybody who is a Freemason will know that the things that people talk about against Freemasonry are not true. We're not a secret society. There's no conspiracy theory going on here. If there was a conspiracy theory, it's failed, because Freemasonry's been going for 300 years and we haven't taken over the world yet. So if we're a conspiracy theory, we're not very good at it.
Accurate information is hard to come by. If you want information, accurate information about Masonry, what it's about, what its goals and objectives are, talk to a Mason. We
have a saying, to be one, ask one, and it's as simple as that. If you wish to become a Freemason, find somebody who you know to be a Freemason and ask them. If you don't know someone who is actually a Freemason, go to the telephone directory, have a look under fraternal societies, and you'll find lodges listed, and all you have to do is ask.
I think it's kind of difficult to explain how close and how well knit Masons are. And it's the kind of thing that we should be doing whether we're Masons or not. If we really and truly believe in the things that are in the Bible and said that you are your brother's keeper, then that's what you ought to be.
We're not demons. We're not trying to take over the world. What we're doing is trying to make good men even better men. And we do that by learning lessons within the lodge room and by helping each other, and not only each other, but the community as a whole. And that's it. That's what Freemasonry is about.